Right, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming today. We have a great set of alumni panelists here to share their experience and answer your questions on the topic of programming. As we go through this presentation, please feel free to type your questions in the chat or to use the raise hand feature to ask those questions. We'll get started by asking each of the alumni to give a brief overview of their career path and their current role, and then we'll open it up to questions. So why don't we just go in alphabetical order? So if Maggie, you would be willing to start?
Yes. Hi, I'm Maggie. My pronouns are she and her. I graduated from UW in 2017 with a bachelor's in computer science, and now I'm a software engineer at Google. Was there anything else I was supposed to share? I'm sorry.
Nope, that's great. Gage, if you'd like to go next.
Hi, I'm Gage Trader, and I graduated in, boy, I have to think now because it's been a while, 2007 from UW-Madison with a bachelor's in computer science. And in some ways, my career path was very traditional in that I went right into, got a job programming right away after college, but I've been there, same place since, and I've done a lot of different things there. It's a very small company. It's not what I expected because it's not like a programming oriented company. It's a retail company. We manufacture window treatments, but the need for software everywhere. And so I kind of became a sole developer and then learned a lot about the business, doing things like warehouse inventory management, replenishment, and then now I'm leading a small team of developers as we continue to grow, and I'm the director of operations.
Thank you both for sharing. And again, students, feel free to put your questions in the chat as they come up. The first question that I'd like to ask you both is, what advice do you have for students who want to go into this field? And what should students be doing to prepare themselves for a career in programming?
That's a good question. I think one of the things that was most helpful for me was doing internships. I did both of my internships with Google, so to be fair, I have only worked at Google. But nothing prepares you better for being a software engineer in industry than being able to test it out for a summer. I just think it's a really cool way to be able to kind of ensure that this is the path you want to go down, or maybe to be able to try out different roles. I know that there's some, like Microsoft and Google both have underclassmen internships and like the Microsoft one allows you to test out a couple different roles within the tech field, which is cool.
And I would definitely echo the internship route because it's so important. And I think even before internships, if you can find anything that's at least tangentially related, I worked for the UW system doing web design, not really web design, but website management for them before I had an internship. And I'll be honest, I didn't come to the UW with any background in programming, so my first class was at the UW, and I didn't have, I wasn't a really strong programmer, until probably my senior year. It really took me a while because I just didn't have some of those foundational things, and doing little things like even with the web, which isn't as related to some of the hard programming you're doing with computer science. You still learn a lot, and then you start to incorporate it into what you're doing. You can see how things connect, and it also gives you work experience that you can use on a resume for even an internship if it's a competitive one. You're going to want to show what you're doing. I found that to be really valuable. And then another thing I would say is to really start to try and build connections outside of the school. If there are like local groups working in, if you're interested in a language, or if you're interested in some particular piece of technology, there's probably a meetup for that or something that you can drop in on and start to meet some people. And I feel like if I had done more of that, I probably would have had an even easier time right after school. But it's definitely something that's really helped me as I progressed through my career as well, is to make connections and then learn from others, in the area.
Great, thank you so much. Do either of you have you touched briefly, Gage, on kind of networking. Do you have any tips on how students can better network or things that they should be prepared to talk about when networking?
Yeah, it's a great question. Like, I'm trying to think of how I've approached networking, and it's really been, I don't know if it's kind of specific to the groups of in Madison, the programming groups I've been a part of, but it's been very relaxed and just kind of like conversational. Like, hey, I like this kind of thing. We're all, I'm in a .NET tech stack, and so most of the meetups and groups I'm a part of revolve around .NET in some way. So you have some kind of commonality that's helpful. Usually an interest or something you're working with, but a lot of times groups are just really happy to have people and to have, people interested who are passionate and interested in something. That goes a long way. I would say, I would kind of went into these groups on my own. Like I was working on my own, and I didn't really have a lot of people I knew who were going to specific groups, but I started to kind of make friends that way just by going out and attending some of their events. And I tried a couple different groups in Madison and found some that I like better than others. And I guess just a little bit of trial and error. Use resources like meetup.com or org. I don't remember if they're an org or com, but they're, and I'm sure on campus there are lots of groups too. So you can always get involved with those.
Yeah, I feel like I've gotten to where I am because of networking, but it hasn't been in like a specific way. Like I was never trying to network. Like I don't go into a room and think like, oh, who should I go schmooze with to, be able to advance my career. It's really just been like a natural thing that's happened for me. To be fair, I am very extroverted, but it's just kind of happened where, I was in the West CS program, and like we would do basically like a field trip to the Google Madison office where I work now, and like I had met a Google engineer there, and, we exchanged contact information, and like I actually followed up with that person and ended up getting an internship with him the following summer, and I know now from being on the other side of it, like I'll give out my email sometimes to students, and a lot of times people don't follow up with me, and I know maybe it could be intimidating or scary, or you might think that people don't actually want to talk to you, but I would just encourage you, like if someone shares their contact information with them, like go ahead and follow up. The worst that can happen is they, maybe don't have time for you, but the best that can happen is that, you actually form a relationship and a connection. And, I've definitely helped or done what I can to help students get internships or find teams. So there are people out here that want to help.
Yeah, it just made me think of something else, Maggie, as you were talking about. There are a lot of conferences around too. Like there can be little short conferences, 1-day conferences. Sometimes they're like 3-day conferences, and sometimes there's a financial burden there that might be a little tough to overcome. But some of them are cheap or free, and there's a good way that's a good way to also meet. There's usually a lot of different people there you can socialize with, and I think also in this field in particular, there are a lot of recruiters around, and you have to be a little bit careful because sometimes, sometimes recruiters are really just interested in placing whoever, wherever, and making their commission. But I have met some recruiters who I actually got to know them, and they actually were really really good about looking for very specific fits. For me, and even though I didn't go with any of them, I really appreciated the time they took to actually learn about me, and that can be a good resource if you can actually get a good one. But I found that at conferences and certain events, they're everywhere. Like you see a lot of booths. A lot of the sponsors are consulting firms or firms that have recruiters. But again, that can be another really good way to network.
Thank you both for that insight. Again, students, as you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat or use the raise hand function, and we'll be sure to read those out. Another question that I have for you both is, what are the most rewarding or satisfying parts of your work, and what are the most challenging parts?
I think the answer there is probably the same on both sides. You know, I can get into very frustrating debugging, you know, sessions where I have no idea what's going on, and, you know, I'm reaching out to different people, and, you know, there's been times where I've even spent like weeks on a problem, and, you know, but then at the same time, when you do finally fix it, then that, you know, joy and euphoria you feel is what keeps me coming back for more anyway.
Yeah, that sounds very familiar, Maggie. You know, I can tell you that one of the things I really love to do is to build software for people to use. And you know, when I see the end result of doing a really good job and building a really robust you know, application, and then seeing how that either saves a person time or saves a lot of money or whatever it does, you know, like they just, a lot of times you'll just see them really happy with, you know, the result, and then that in turn makes me feel it's very rewarding. And you know, there's also a lot of challenge in it too. Like the solution isn't always obvious, and you know, as I've learned different architecture patterns, I really enjoy architecting software and figuring out what's a really efficient way that's also kind of elegant. I think of code as art a lot of times. On the frustrating side, I would say, you know, especially when I was doing it all by myself, it was hard to. It was hard, you didn't really have anyone to bounce any ideas off of. So if you got stuck, you know, then you had to lean on your connections, your community that you've got to try and help you figure out some problems. It can be very frustrating. Like Maggie said, you know, sometimes you go weeks without really being able to solve something, and there've been a couple situations I've gotten into where, like, particularly where I'm also managing a lot of the hardware and networking with my small company. I'm not great at that, and so sometimes there are some things that I'm like, boy, this is way over my head. I gotta figure out how to fix this, and I gotta do it now because, you know, the server's down or something like that. And that can be very, very nerve-wracking, you know. But thankfully, I've always managed to pull through, and I would say the rewards far outweigh those drawbacks.